Is Seth Rollins pulling our leg, or shall I say knee, once again? So coming on the back of a great PLE, Crown Jewel was, I'm going to say, 10 times better than WrestlePalooza. Like, I actually enjoyed Crown Jewel a lot. I think from start to finish, it was a jam-packed show with the right decisions for the most part in terms of the outcomes of the matches, and the actual matches themselves were very entertaining. Namely the John Cena and AJ Styles match. I'll make a separate video on that, I'm sure, someday. But then as we went into Monday Night Raw, the main thing everyone's talking about is our boy Seth Rollins. Seth Rollins, who's responsible for the heist of the century, the ruse of the century, and now he's in a bit of a pickle where, I'm not sure if it's a pickle actually, or if he wants us to believe it, where he's potentially injured. He had a pretty solid match with Cody Rhodes at Crown Jewel champ versus champ for the Crown Jewel Championship, which of course he won. Again, I think that was the right decision, but he did this nasty coast to coast, very Shane McMahon-like, and that boy got some elevation. Like, I think we were reminded once again how athletic and how good Seth Rollins really is in the ring. When he went from coast to coast and he headbutted Cody Rhodes, it just looked impeccable. And the angle coming out of this match is Seth Rollins actually injured his shoulder. And therefore what we saw on Monday Night Raw, the implosion of the Vision just randomly at the end of the show, is to get Seth Rollins off TV and get the Vision, well, whatever's left of this Vision, Braun Breaker potentially being the head, to continue in a separate direction. Now, this could very much be the case. I feel like we're living in a bit of a different time right now with professional wrestling. And of course, I'll touch on the ruse of the century in a second. That really has swayed a lot of people in believing perhaps this is all a work. But I do want to say before I continue, Seth Rollins legit could be injured and they may have used this angle to write him off TV. Now, if that is the case, best wishes to Seth Rollins. He's one of the top faces doing some of his best work right now. I'm super entertained every time he comes on my television. So if this is legit, I wish him all the best, a speedy recovery, and I wish to see the Visionary back on my TV screen as soon as possible. But now I want to touch on why I still think this is a work. Firstly, this angle on Raw. If it was to take Seth Rollins off of TV and to keep the Brons busy and Paul Heyman busy moving forward with an angle, surely the World Heavyweight Championship would have been stripped off of Seth Rollins and he would have come out and done, you know, the standard procedure that each superstar will do when he's vacating the championship. Now, unless next week we get this, then of course I'll eat my words and say, you know what, this wasn't at work, this was legit. And once again, speedy recovery to Seth Rollins. However, I really want to get into a couple of points why I think this is actually a work. So firstly, it's the architect we're talking about, right? It's the visionary. It's the man that's made it cool to pull wool over our eyes. Of course, the most recent event actually took place this year, which was the Ruse of the Century. Seth Rollins legit faking an injury at Saturday night's main event against LA Knight, which from my understanding, a lot of the WWE superstars weren't aware of this, much like us wrestling fans. So when this happened, we were like, whoa, it created for a monumental moment, right, at SummerSlam, night one. Almost toppled his heist of the century 10 years ago at WrestleMania 31. And added to that architect, that sly heel persona that Seth Rollins has, it really added to it. So I think he's taking the same direction with this angle. And one thing this angle has in common with the angle he had earlier on in the year with Saturday night's main event going into SummerSlam was his association with CM Punk. Now we know CM Punk is next in line for Seth Rollins' World Heavyweight Championship as a #1 contender. The last time CM Punk came so close to becoming world champion again was of course when Seth Rollins was playing chess while I guess CM Punk was playing checkers. Maybe, where CM Punk won it and held it for a mere 5 minutes, which was very sad to see, but it was still a nice emotional moment. And I kind of think they're making this into an angle now, where every time CM Punk's going to get close to a world championship, especially when Seth Rollins is on the same show or within his proximity, that's when Seth Rollins starts to go into his bag of tricks, think one step ahead. Now, do I think if this is going to be another trick of Seth Rollins's, is it going to be as effective? Is it going to land as good as it did the first time? No, I don't. But this association, once again with CM Punk being in the title picture, makes me think this is one of the reasons why Seth Rollins is legit not injured. This is just an angle. Number two is probably the most prominent one that everyone's going on about, and I definitely agree. Why would he beat Cody Rhodes at Crown Jewel, champ vs champ? Now, of course, you can make the argument Seth Rollins needed the win in every metric possible because he's 0-3. So he needed this to be not just a credible champion, but I think a credible superstar. Despite him being a cemented main eventer, a future Hall of Famer, he definitely needed this victory. But the way he won as well, and the way he delivered that mini promo at the end of Crown Jewel, all of it just screams like there was a reason for that. And we want to ride out the momentum. Of course, if the injury is legit and it happened in the match, then, you know, perhaps they were going to go with the outcome anyway and they didn't change anything. We know that the WWE are notorious to call audibles, right, via the referee. You know, if you know that the superstar's actually been hurt, all right, you know what, we're going to flip the script just in case. We're going to protect the long-term story, long-term character development here as well, and we're going to have Cody win. They didn't go with that. So again, that tells me why go to all these lengths if there's a potential, a risk that Seth Rollins will have to go away. And moving on to my third point, I've got a few of these. My third point would be, I just think it's way too predictable. I just think it's so predictable. Like this whole, ever since like I mentioned in my last video, ever since the vision came to fruition, we've had this, almost this disconnect at times between the members, especially Paul Heyman, the Oracle, and Seth Rollins. And a mere 6 months in, you know, literally just before Crown Jewel, you had the whole clamoring of what happens if Seth Rollins does not get the job done? What happens? Who do the Brumbians look up to? Can they trust? Can they follow in the footsteps of this architect, this visionary leader in Seth Rollins? Will the Oracle stick around? Because we know the Oracle is a certified gold digger. And having said that, they brought that into the angle. Literally, we had that tense moment between Seth Rollins and Paul Heyman, and Paul Heyman was like, if you don't get the job done, then hey. And because of that, especially in late WWE fashion, I just think it's too predictable. For them foreshadowing it, going into it so early, and then Seth Rollins wins anyway, and all of a sudden we're just going to pull the plug and we're going to have the vision actually permanently turn on Seth Rollins. It's just too predictable. And we know we're living in a time right now where storytelling, like, you know, bloodline cinema and all that is imperative. I would argue that's what got us to where we are in this Renaissance period right now. And I think literally in the last couple of weeks and this last PLE as well, the WWE have probably taken note of the complaints that the online fans and just general fans who have been not too happy with the last few months in terms of the product quality. So what other way to shake things up after a great PLE in Crown Jewel? Perhaps fall back on a formula that worked most recently where Seth Rollins did an angle. And with that, don't keep things predictable. Because if they didn't foreshadow the breakup of the vision and the tension between Paul Heyman and Seth Rollins, I may have felt a bit different right now. But I just feel like there's no art behind that. And I think although the WWE can be quite lazy sometimes in this regard, they've done a half decent job most recently. So again, way too predictable. And point number 4, I'll link this into the first point I mentioned, like the ruse of the century, and sort of rinsing and repeating. There's a online picture going, well, I guess you can say viral, of Seth Rollins in an arm sling eating an ice cream cone. I guess you can call it user-generated content, UGC, which is one of the best tools entertainment companies can use, especially the WWE. It's exactly what Seth Rollins used last time. He even used the Rich Eisen show, where you also have the No Contest Wrestling podcast. Shout out to the podcast, really enjoyable. Both TJ and O'Shea Jackson Jr. do a tremendous job on that podcast. And Seth Rollins, of course, visited the headquarters and was part of their show and sort of really worked up the injury there. And then there was also pictures taken with him. I think he was with his daughter and Becky Lynch. He was in crutches in public. So when Seth Rollins came out and cashed in at SummerSlam, it was like, hold on a minute. What about all the user-generated content, the organic, authentic content? Him going on shows that have nothing to do with the WWE. This image where Seth Rollins is in an arm sling having an ice cream cone next to a fan gives me the same vibe. And lastly, to touch on the vision, what does this actually do for the vision? I have 2 points here. Bronson Reed has been doing some of his, well, actually not some of his, he's been doing his best work, and I think he just hit his stride. He literally just got momentum. His feud with Roman Reigns has been doing bits for him, to be honest. I know not everyone's a fan of this whole Shulafala tribal thief thing. I think it works for him. And although initially when he lost to Roman Reigns at Clash in Paris, I was a bit like, okay, well that's a bit of a dud. He should have won then. However, because now he's got a victory over Roman Reigns, of course not in a clean fashion, that would not be possible, it's still given Bronson Reed that credibility, especially because it was in his home country. And then we ask the question, Bron Breakker, who's really been the focal point of this entire group anyway. We know he's got a rocket strapped to his ass. He's going straight to the main event of WrestleMania. I mean, they keep reminding us every week anyway. And rightfully so. I mean, the guy, I think, has the entire package. I cannot wait till he's finally executed on. I would argue these last 6 months haven't really done anything for Bron Bron Breakker. Bron Breakker was top tier before. When he was in the IC title picture and he was on his own, he would come out with his leather jacket and the crowd was already behind him. He already had the in-ring, his promo is great. He had this sort of enigma, this mystery around him because he was a solo guy. And although being part of a faction could really skyrocket anybody, just ask Randy Orton and Batista from Evolution 20 plus years ago, there was the association people were making. I think what would work here is Bron Breakker's position as like Batista, where he's in the group. So he's in Vision, aka Evolution, for an extended period of time, maybe a year or two, at least a year. And then he has a program with Seth Rollins, who would of course be the heel at the time, just like Triple H was. And we would be putting Bron Breakker over like it's no man's business. That would have worked. We had a lot more time left in the oven. But really, Bron Breakker, all he's done is come out and he's been like a heavy. I know Bronson Reed's really the heavy in the group, but Bron Breakker hasn't really done anything in the Division. He hasn't even gotten to the point where we're sort of building up to that crescendo, you know, where we're starting to, yeah, of course, when he comes out, we're always barking and stuff like, you know, we're getting behind Bron Breakker, but we wanted that icing on the cake where, you know, there seems to be turmoil in the group and Seth Rollins is just getting out of control, and then the crowd start calling for Bron Breakker even more and more and more, and Bron Breakker's like, you know what, I'm tired of being a lapdog, even though he box. But then he slowly starts breaking out of Seth Rollins' shadow, and that's when Seth Rollins' old ego, because, you know, we saw most recently in his promo saying, I don't need the Vision, aka the Vision needs me. I'm doing this in the name of the future, but really, he's really kind of self-centered. So I really think there was just so much more left in the tank, and if Seth Rollins is even injured, I would argue, depending on the severity, of course, of his shoulder, if it is legit, we could have kept him on the screen. We could have kept him as that conniving heel who just doesn't give up his championship. Screw it, let's be different. I just feel like there's so many other ways to skin this cat here. Write him off TV and end the Vision. Because now what we're gonna do, we're kind of cornered ourselves. What, like 6-9 months down the line, depending on when Seth Rollins comes back, he's gonna come back and he's gonna automatically be a babyface, because typically when someone returns from such a long stint or when they're champion, they come back and it's like automatically babyface. I know in the past when Seth Rollins returned, I think it was 2016, after he shot his knees for the first time, he came back and he was still a heel, but it's not as common. Typically, long returns are always bopped up with a face turn, you know? So it's like, okay, what do we do now? Are we gonna strap the World Championship to Bron Breakker? I think Bron Breakker's ready. I think Bron Breakker's 100% ready. I just feel like we can get more milk, we can get more juice out of this time with Bron Breakker. It's the exact same way when people are like, oh yeah, you know, it should have been Bron Breakker versus Roman Reigns at Crown Jewel, not Bronson Reed versus Roman Reigns. I beg to differ. The Bron Breakker and Roman Reigns match needs to happen at WrestleMania, maybe at least a year, maybe 2 years down the line, where Bron Breakker is his own man, he's overcome Seth Rollins, and he's having the feud, the program, or with Roman Reigns for a world championship. That's the level that we're at. And sometimes pulling the dish out the oven too early, you know, as we know, it just doesn't slap. We need it to marinate, we need it to cook. So again, it's just too early for the Vision. Bronson Reed was hitting his stride. Bron Breakker didn't really get anything out of this program with the Vision for the last 6 months. And then where does it leave Paul Heyman? Paul Heyman is one of those loose chicks where he's got like a bunch of dudes around him. He's got his Brock Lesnar, he's got his CM Punk, he's got his Roman Reigns, Seth Rollins, whatever happens with him. It's like, it's all just messy and convoluted. And then we've got War Games Survivor Series coming up as well, where of course we know factions or people are going to be grouped together. None of it just makes sense. I'll be curious to see what the WWE unveil next week regarding this angle. But that's it from my end. I'll see you guys next time. Peace.